Hi there, Emily Midgett here with you today on the Pinkfresh Studio YouTube channel, and today I have some reverse psychology in the form of watercoloring today. We're going to be working with the wonderful in every way hot foil plate, which is actually one of my own illustrations, and I'm super excited to see it in hot foil plate form. I have hot foiled it using some kind of charcoal metallic foil onto some Arches cold press watercolor paper. If you have not tried hot foiling onto watercolor paper, you are missing out because it creates such a beautiful, almost letterpress look. We're also going to be using the Nested Diamonds die set, not the hot foil plate, just the dies, with some vellum. And then I have some Sennelier watercolors, which is just like a 48 pack that I got, I think, on Amazon. But they're a really great array of colors. So we're going to be working with those. So now today, the technique that I'm going to be sharing with you is kind of like reverse psychology for your watercoloring. I struggle with keeping the highlights on my watercolored images truly light. I tend to have a little bit of a heavy hand and want to make those images really bright and vibrant. So I am going to add a very colorful halo around my watercolored image first. That's going to be our first step, because adding that colorful halo around the edge of my watercolored image is going to kind of visually create a reverse. It's going to allow me to see that large flower image in the center, that large poppy image. It's going to allow me to see that as a bright, light image. It's going to allow me, at least in my eyes, keep the highlights as light as possible. So I am just adding, this is kind of a minty green. I laid down first some clean, clear water around my image, and then I am just dropping in some kind of minty green watercolor from my Sennelier palette. I do have to make sure to be careful because unlike heat embossed images where you have that kind of raised area that kind of creates a well and it protects the images a little bit, the hot foiling is flat. It's the opposite of flat. It's kind of inverse. It debosses down into the paper. So you do have to be careful so that you don't get watercolor where you don't want it. So I am being careful. I'm using my Thirsty brush, which is just a dry paintbrush, a clean, dry paintbrush. I clean it off, dab it on my stamp chamois until it's really dry, and then I suck that watercolor up from where I don't want it with that dry brush. You can see that I'm doing that right there. I'm sucking up some of that color that I don't want on that light poppy flower. So now I added that minty green and then that kind of dark forest green. And now we're going to start adding the more concentrated color to the flowers and leaves. The flower itself, we're going to leave alone for right now. We're going to continue with our reverse psychology on the images and the area surrounding that poppy flower. So I'm adding some really dark hunter green to the leaves themselves. This is the same hunter green that I added to the background. It's just a lot more concentrated. There's a lot less water in this watercolor that I am putting down on these leaves. So it makes it a lot more intense, but it still keeps things cohesive in the background around that light colored flower. So you will see that I am laying down, I've laid down one layer of color that's a little bit lighter, a little bit more diluted. And then after that dries, I'm going back in with another layer of color just to intensify some of those shadows, intensify some of those leaves that are kind of tucked behind another leaf, just to make sure that we get some contrast with the shadowed areas. So you can see how it looks with this with these kind of reverse psychology images. So I have taken some lavender, some purple, some pink, some black with lots of water, and I've kind of created a custom color. Lavender is really great for shadows. If you add shadows to your watercoloring, lavender or like a steely grayish blue, those are great for adding shadows. I wanted to keep the color on this poppy image as minimal as possible. So I'm using lots and lots of water. I'm laying down that really light diluted color just in the areas that I really want those shadows to be more intense. But I am allowing the white of the watercolor paper to still shine through. I am allowing the the watercolor to kind of taper away by using a lot of water with my clean paintbrush. I lay the color down in those shadowed areas, clean my brush, dab it on my stamp chamois so there's not too much watercolor on, or too much water on my brush. And then I pull that color out so that it fades away and you are still left with that white image on that, the white of that watercolor paper is still shining through. And it just helps to keep those highlights that we strive to keep on those petals. It helps to keep those true. It helps to keep them as light as possible. So you can see I'm just adding color. I do end up using my watercolor brush as a little bit of a vacuum. I use it as a thirsty brush occasionally just so that I can keep that light, bright white true, so that I'm not adding too much color. That's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid adding too much color just to keep this as light, a pale, kind of a pinky lavender as possible. So now that we've added our first layer, I'm going to go back in with a second layer just on the areas that are really shadowed, that are really tucked behind, so that we are not we want the contrast. We want the contrast of the petals that are tucked behind versus the petals that are on top, that are going to be lighter in color and brighter and have those bright white highlights. So now you can see our finished image. That green halo around the edge, I think, really helps that pale pink lavender poppy image to really pop. So now we've got the nested diamonds, and I'm going to show you one of my little storage tricks for my hot foiled sentiments. I like to hot foil a bunch of sentiments all at once and then cut them out, and then I have a sentiment ready to go for my project so I don't have to fuss around with it. I keep all of them, I organize them all by color, by foil color, and put them into little storage envelopes. And then I just have a nice little selection of storage, or of sentiments ready to go whenever I'm creating my cards. So we're going to create a 5x7 card today. This is a little bit different than my normal. I wanted to create just something a little bit different. I'm getting kind of bored with all these A2 cards that I'm creating. So I trimmed down that A2 watercolor panel that I had created and created a 3.5 by 5.5 inch panel, which I matted with some really dark green cardstock that was just slightly larger. Now we are going to create some interest for that bright light purple background. I have die cut the outline floral frame, which is a new die from this past release. I've die cut it from some really sparkly white glitter cardstock. And I'm going to do a little bit of customized trimming here. I'm going to trim some of these little pieces off and just create kind of a little frame at the top and bottom of my 5x7 card front. This is a piece of lavender cardstock that I have trimmed down to 5x7. It'll fit perfectly on an A7 card base. And I am just adding this glittery, lacy, intricate die cut to the corner at the top left and the corner of the bottom right. And I just love taking die cuts like this and customizing them to make them have even more uses than just your typical A2 use. So I'm using some liquid glue and my tweezers to help get perfect placement on this A7 card front. And then you've got this beautifully detailed, it's light enough that it doesn't overpower the rest of the image, but those sparkles, they just really pop on that lavender cardstock. I love this. So now we're going to add our green matted watercolored image to the center with some foam tape and just get perfect placement in the center there. And then we're going to add, I have added the hot foiled Fancy Script Words hot foil sentiment. I have added that to my vellum diamond with the nested diamonds. I've added that with some foam tape, and then I'm just going to adhere that with some teeny dots of liquid adhesive tucked behind that are behind that solid die cut, so that it kind of hides that. And it does cover up that watercolored image that we worked on before, but the vellum being right on top of that image still allows that pretty poppy to peek through. Say that 5 times fast. So now I'm just adding some leaf glitter drops. These are the perfect match. This green is the perfect match for the green background that we have, and it just adds another element of sparkle to this card front. And so I'm going to kind of push these around a little bit. I like to work in odd numbers with my embellishments. We're going to adhere them with some liquid adhesive and just make sure that we get perfect placement before we start adhering them down. I do use my needle nose tweezers to help get perfect placement, but then we're done. I hope you enjoyed this video. I love using this reverse psychology technique with really light colored floral images. So I hope you'll give it a try. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.